Warning, the following episode may contain explicit language. We don't know at this moment if it does, but it probably will. In the 1960s, after a long journey through the rural hills of Kentucky, a persistent hematologist finally finds the person he has been looking for.
Hello there. May I help you?
Mr. Fugate, you are not easily located. I've searched all over these mountains to find you.
Well, I allow you're right. I'm not easy to find. Why are you in a white coat? You some sort of doctor? What brought you all the way out here?
Well, I'm here because I think I can help you with your problem.
Problem? What problem?
Well, your unusual coloration. I have reason to believe that it's due to a treatable disorder.
You talking about my blue skin?
Well, yes, of course.
Look. I've been blue my whole life. I'm 60 years old and I feel fine. I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah, but your skin is so blue.
Now, I'll say again, my skin has been blue my entire life. I imagine your skin has had that same sickly pale complexion your entire life. Have you gone to someone to change it? Does it bother you? Probably not.
Well, it's just that if I'm right, I think you have a particular condition called...
Now, listen here. My parents were blue. My grandparents were blue. It might not surprise you to know that my children are blue. We're all just blue. Aside from being side glanced by a person such as yourself, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, but what if it was detrimental to your health?
I suppose it might be. But it suited my grandfather and grandmother just fine well into their 90s. Didn't bother them, and it doesn't bother me.
Look, I see where you're coming from, but if I'm right and you have the condition I suspect, I can put this here substance into your blood and fix the issue. If it works, you'll likely turn from blue to, well, like me.
You're referring to that bottle in your hand with the blue stuff in it?
Yes, sir. It's called methylene blue. I could use this as a medicine, and I'm sure it'll work.
And how are you supposed to give me that?
Well, I have to start an IV, place a needle into your vein to give the medication. If it works, it'll last at least a few days.
All right. But just to summarize, you're a stranger who's been wandering around the backwoods of Kentucky, wearing a white coat while carrying a blue liquid in a little glass bottle. You heard legends about the blue people living at this here residence. You figured you'd introduce yourself and offer to stab my arm with a needle to give me your blue liquid, to turn me pink for a few days, to prove your theory correct about my condition.
Yes, that is precisely what I was looking to do.
Now, have me say that out loud back to you. Do you think a fella like me would be more or less likely to say yes to a fella like you?
Yes? I feel like you want me to say yes.
I do not know, sir, that we are communicating on the same level.
But what if I was successful and then we wrote up your entire medical history as a famous case study published throughout the world? We'd be remembered forever.
I feel like you don't know how bad you are at convincing people.
All right, so that's a yes. To me, it sounds like a yes.
You didn't even say please.
Please?
Way too slow.
Please? Oh, man.
Beautiful.
For historians. We look at cases throughout history. It's just Max in there and Mac and me. You gotta listen, you don't have to read. For historians. For historians. For historians.
Welcome, everyone. This is Poor Historians, a podcast delving into the archives of medical history. As three practicing emergency physicians, we will explore the unusual ailments, treatments, physicians, and all related material having to do with the healing arts. I'm Max, and I'm joined here by my good friends and colleagues, Aaron and Mike. How is your blood doing today, gentlemen?
It's nice and blue. I like it.
I think mine's fine. I was a little lightheaded earlier today, but I had 3 cups of coffee. But it may have been from low hemoglobin. Maybe. You never know.
Well, there are ways to find out. However, I will tell you that my blood today is still filled with endorphins from going to a live wrestling pay-per-view, and it was the best thing ever. All Elite Wrestling shout out.
Nice.
Please sponsor our show, please.
Your blood was pumping. I wonder how many sayings we have to do with blood. I think a lot. We got a lot of them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of metaphors. Well, either way, before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice. It exists only to entertain. There are plenty of places to learn to be a better doctor, but we like to think of this podcast as a slice of medical chocolate cream pie. It's of very little nutritional value, but it's tasty with a little sugar-induced dopamine rush. So with that, let's get to whatever we're talking about today.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about a gentleman named Madison Cawein III. And the third is an important distinction because this man was a grandson of the great Madison Cawein, known as the Keats of Kentucky. He was was a Kentucky
poet laureate of who's Keats of Kentucky?
I don't know. I think it's just for the alliteration. There's a whole nother set of articles on this gentleman. He was a famous published poet of the time, but
he wasn't a doctor.
No, he was not at all. Oh. So the apple fell far from the tree.
All right. Well, this has nothing to do with that guy then.
No, not really. Madison, he was a sorry, it was a dead end. Maybe we could cut that out. I don't know.
It's a great reference. I like the reference.
I couldn't
Everybody knows
avoid putting it in.
Please continue.
There's a lot of alliteration. So anyway, the Madison we're talking about was a Kentucky hematologist that happened onto an irresistible mystery, given that he had a thing for blood that dated back to the war, as it were.
That's
he was
a fact.
Well, that's how he got into it. He was a medical technician in World War II, and he fell in love with medicine because of the way blood looked under the microscope, as he says it.
That's not right.
Yeah, it's awfully Dexter sounding.
It's a little creepy. Well, I don't know. I mean, we don't hang out with a lot of pathologists. Maybe they all have this moment where they're in histology and they just fall in love with colors. It's possible.
Did anyone ever see his reflection in a mirror?
Yes, I think they
during the day. Did they specifically mention this?
No.
Then we don't know for sure that he's not a vampire.
You're right. That's true.
Does that mean that all pathologists are vampires?
I don't think that follows.
Do we have any pathologist fans? Please reach out to us and tell us if you're a vampire.
They're not going to tell you. Well, maybe they would. No, they wouldn't, because they can't come into your home unless you invite them in. Right? Isn't that the rule?
They can email though.
Yeah, just be like, "Hey, can I come over?" And you say yes, and then
that'd be bad. No, yeah. If you get an email from a pathologist, just don't invite him over. That's the way to be safe. Which is a little bit mean. It's a little mean. Anyway,
invite pathologists to your house. They're fine. They're good people.
Yeah, no, this is true. I'm just trying to avoid getting derailed here. We haven't even made it through the first paragraph.
Have you ever seen? Real question. Have you ever seen a pathologist?
Yeah, we had in the basement of the VA, and that's where we had our pathology rounds. We'd go down into the basement. They had the best coffee down there, and we'd have rounds with the pathologist guy. I forget his name, but he was awesome. He'd just pull stuff out of bins that had been in formaldehyde for years and show it to us. It was the best class.
Take a bite out of the liver, put it back in the glass.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because they are vampires.
Anyway, this vampire / hematologist went to Harvard, ended up in Lexington, Kentucky, because that's where he was from originally, actually. Started to hear rumors about Blue Hill people down in Hazard, Kentucky to the south, and that piqued his interest. He started driving down from Lexington, where he lived, to search for these people, and found a witness in a nurse, Ruth Pendergrass, who described her first encounter after a patient came into clinic in the winter. So she had a 60-some-year-old patient come in from the cold in Kentucky with severe blue color of the skin and especially the nails, almost indigo in color. Scared her to death, thought the patient was having a heart attack, but the patient was totally fine. And once the patient warmed up, she was still blue. She related that this was nothing new to her, that she was one of the, quote, Blue Combses who live up on Ball Creek. And Ruth didn't think too much of it until she met Cawein, who was searching for these people who enlisted her help.
So basically, this patient walks into a clinic, is just blue as can be.
Yep.
Doesn't sound like that's why she's there.
Slate blue. Nope. I mean, I maybe she was cold or so. It didn't actually say in what I read about what the visit was about. They couldn't get past the blue color.
She's there for like a hangnail
attack or something.
Like, ma'am, you are blue. You want to talk about this? And she's like, nope, I'm returning to the hills.
Yeah, she needed a work excuse. So
fair.
So when we say blue, we're not saying they're depressed. We're saying they're actually blue.
Oh no, blue color, like slate blue. Yeah, like slate blue, like their skin was slate. Yeah, totally blue. So then, as he was trying to look into this mystery, this good doctor, presumably in his white coat for a few months at least, scrambled up and down the hills of rural Kentucky, like driving into the valleys, literally trying to find these people just because there was no other way to search for him. So he had stories of.
So hold on, you're saying he's cruising around in his white coat and his safari hat with a machete on his hip, just hacking and slashing through the Ozarks to find the mysterious blue people? Is how this happened?
Yeah,
And
with
that's
Nurse Ruth. Well, this is the history from Nurse Ruth and the good doctor. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and it's not too far ago. I mean, this is the 60s, so he gave colorful stories of hound dogs at every house, and they would chase him off. And then every once in a while, he would see a blue person through the trees at the top of a hill, and he'd take off running after him, but they'd always get away, which just strange. So. Okay, so he can't find him, and eventually he's in clinic and Hazard just doing his actual job instead of running around the woods. It's nice to be able to get away with that while you're actually employed. But and a couple came walking into clinic while he was there, and they were the Richies, or another offshoot of a clan of people related to a whole family called the Fugates, many of whom had this blue color. The Richies were actually, they are described as being very pained at presenting to the clinic and sort of embarrassed about their color. But otherwise, they were completely healthy. So again, it doesn't even say what they were there for. Just said I ruled out a heart condition. So it's these people that are blue and they don't like to go to doctors, and that was sort of this mystery. But he had actually found somebody.
Well, I think actually an interesting side story on this was one of my very first experiences as a resident at a pediatric hospital. And I walk into a room, and this might have been my literal first day of residency. I walk into a room for what was described on the chart as an upper respiratory infection or cold. And I think it was like a 16-month-old or something. And I walk into the room, and sitting on this lady's lap is a pretty much completely blue child.
Nice.
Who is registering something like 82% on the pulse oximeter. Okay. Laughing and babbling and looking completely fine. And since it's like my first day, and if you don't know much on your first day of residency, you just know that something seems very wrong. I'm going to go get my attending.
Definitely.
And I walked back out. I got the attending. I was like, there's a blue child in this room. And of course, the attending comes running in there with me. In the way that we're going down the hall, I'm trying to explain. I'm like, yeah, the kid's really blue, but I mean, they look great. I don't know. I didn't do much of an exam because I just walked in, blue kid, let's go get help. And it turns out kind of interesting, not related to the story, but this is a common thing if you have a kiddo with a certain types of heart condition. And this kiddo is typically blue because they had a hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and all the plumbing of their heart is rerouted. And we won't get into it now, but it's you can be blue without being significantly sick is the moral of the story.
Yeah, those people just live in that region and are still, in my mind, terrifying. Sorry if anyone's listening that happens to have that condition.
You're terrified of babies with hypoplastic hearts.
Yes, I'm terrified of what's going to happen. Also, babies walk around with, little backpacks that infuse them with heart medication constantly. There were some of those too at Children's. Yeah.
You are scared of weird things.
Well, that's not weird.
They don't like jump out and grab you.
Well, I know, but they might get sick in front of me, and that would be,
okay. All
scary.
Right,
professionally scary. Professionally scary.
Okay, that's reasonable. That's reasonable.
I didn't think they were going to get me. But anyway, so what was going on with these people in Kentucky? Well, the doctor had his suspicions about reading about a similar problem in a faraway Alaskan village. But to solve the mystery, I think we have to go back to a love story in rural Kentucky in 1820.
Oh, boy.
Would you have a banjo that you can play in the background?
Going way back. We should. Yes. We got it already right there. Maybe you can do it.
Actually, Mike can probably beatbox the banjo throughout the rest of your story.
I've got a banjo. It's right behind me.
Nice. So Martin Fugate was a French orphan refugee who settled along Troublesome Creek and fell head over heels in the 1820s for a pale redhead named Elizabeth Smith, whose skin, in the stuff I read, was described as pale as the mountain laurel, which must be a southern white flower, I assume. And by some mystery, at that time, 4 of their 7 children were blue, like a hard slate blue all over, just completely blue from head to toe, but otherwise healthy and normal. I imagine that was maybe a little bit awkward moment at birth.
Elizabeth Smith has just given birth to her first child. Martin Fugate, the father, enters the room after the delivery.
Elizabeth, are you okay? How is little Hezekiah?
I don't recall agreeing on the name Hezekiah.
Oh, it is just a suggestion, darling. I just feel like there's so many Owens these days, and that we'd go for a little bit of a unique name.
I'm fine, Martin. Just look at him. Isn't he perfect?
Well, there he is. He sure looks blue, little blue.
What? I think he looks just a bit different in this dim light.
Well, I allow it's a bit dark in here, but I'd swear he looks just blue.
Oh, Martin, he just perfect. He been fed. He's sleeping. He's fine. Your eyes must not be working right.
Liz, I can't help but see that this kid's skin is as blue as the sky. Now I don't want to cast aspersions, but I have to wonder how two folks such as us went ahead and made a blue baby.
What exactly are you insinuating, Martin?
Oh, darling, I'm not insinuating anything. I'm just asking questions. I don't think babies are supposed to be that color.
Martin, this is absolutely your kid. He has your face. He has your blue eyes.
Yeah, but he's blue everywhere, so his eyes ain't so surprising.
That's enough. I don't want to have you talking nonsense any further. This is our baby. I don't care what color he is. You're going to have to deal with that.
All right, darling. You're right. I don't know what got into me. It's just a bit of a shock, that's all, this being our firstborn. I do love my little Hezekiah all the same.
Oh, we're definitely not calling him that now.
Oh, fine. Do you have another name in mind?
I think Rupert would suit him well.
Oh, I think that's a good name. Rupert just rolls off the tongue. I like that name. I don't think I know anyone by that name.
Oh, it's the name of our postman. Just sprang into mind for some reason.
I said I'm sorry already.
I must have missed it then. Sweet little Rupert.
and we're back. So
And we're back. That's
sorry,
my line.
You go
That's
ahead.
my job.
I got confused. I was coming out of a deep hole in the south there. I had a hard time getting back to normal.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to let it pass this time. But anyway, so, that was obviously an interesting scene when it did totally happen exactly that way. And it makes me wonder, Aaron, do you happen to know how exactly did two non-blue persons end up with a perfectly healthy blue baby?
Yeah, well, by some chance, these two both carried a recessive gene that caused a problem. They didn't have enough of a certain molecule that fixed their blood when it's broken, basically, which I'll get to in a minute. Not sure how far down the genetic rabbit hole we want to go to, but this caused a condition in that family called methemoglobinemia. So methemoglobinemia is a problem with the molecule in our blood called hemoglobin. In all our red blood cells, we have this molecule. When it circulates into the lungs, it grabs oxygen through the walls of the lungs and then takes it to the whole body, where it's to use to keep kind of everything going, keep our cells, conveyor belts running, and so on. So hemoglobin is perfect for this. It likes oxygen enough to grab it in the lungs, but not so much that it holds on to it when it's lacking elsewhere in the body. It is built around iron molecules. In methemoglobinemia, some of the hemoglobin molecules have iron that's oxidized, and when that happens, they don't work. This actually happens kind of normally all the time when hemoglobin gives up its oxygen to body parts that need it. A small portion of the hemoglobin molecules are damaged and turn into methemoglobin.
Oh man, for just a second there, I had like a organic chemistry flashback, learning with oxidation and reduction and...
For 3 days, I was walking around going, oxidation I lose, reduction I gain. Oil rig, oxidation I lose, reduction I gain.
Leo Gurr. Somewhere, okay. Dr. Dillon, if you happen to find this podcast, I remember that to this day.
Yep, to this day.
I didn't remember that at all.
I really don't want to go down the rabbit hole of organic chemistry, though. Please, that's a dark hole. It's I don't want to do that. But anyway, they're damaged.
You can learn about it on the dark web.
Yes, definitely. It can also happen. This change can happen when hemoglobin encounters other molecules that cause changes at the molecular level. So there's ways, but normally our body fixes it. So it keeps these cells that aren't working at a very low level. Everybody's blood has some methemoglobin in it, just a very small amount. But in the genetic form The fixing is the problem. The people can't fix their own methemoglobin, so they have a lot more than they normally would, and they're missing what's called a housekeeping molecule, I guess, for lack of a better word. In chemistry, molecules that change in this way sometimes change color, and that's the case here. Blood actually turns sort of chocolate covered. Don't get me started on how all old-timey doctors stuck us with descriptions of medical conditions that used foods like, I don't know if they were really hungry for chocolate or currant jelly or whatever they decided to describe things as.
Oh, the currant jelly is the worst, though.
Oh, that's...
Nobody buys currant jelly anymore because of it.
That's true. I think it went out of business distinctly because of that description.
In medical school, they actually were... I remember the first time you heard of currant jelly colored stool or sputum, the prof was like, does anybody here know what a currant is? And then had to explain that currants are something kind of grapey. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's like a little berry, right? It's a little berry.
Yeah, we
and
had currants
looks like
in our yard growing up.
Clusters. Yeah. Not a very good berry, obviously, because we let it go and we didn't seem to worry about it too much.
We use it to describe stool.
Yes. Not good.
Yeah.
So
my stool is usually like Vegemite.
I don't even know what... I've never seen Vegemite, actual Vegemite.
It's dark and tarry. And sticky.
You have a problem. You should probably go see somebody.
It gets everywhere.
Yeah, you should go see somebody.
Mike is full of Vegemite. Explains a lot.
It does. So the blood then turns the skin blue with the find that's called cyanosis above a certain level that's pretty consistent. So just plain cyanosis as a physical exam finding or something you see in a patient, that happens when somebody isn't getting enough oxygen. So when people overdose or they have a bad pneumonia, their skin will turn blue. But in these folks, it happens because they have enough chocolate blood that it shows sort of through, and it just turns the color blue all over.
Have you guys ever heard that song, Chocolate Rain?
No, but I don't.
We should play that.
Such a song.
It's not bad.
No, no. Okay. Purple Rain. I've heard of Purple Rain, but that's not blue or chocolate.
Who sings that? Was that is that Elvis?
Prince.
I was just kidding.
Come on, man.
The body's own response to the initial methemoglobin probably makes it worse because the chocolate blood just sucks at carrying oxygen. So the body makes more good red blood, but that raises the absolute amount of the chocolate blood because more, but the same percentage of the good blood is ruined and the color gets stronger. So you get this sort of feedback loop and the steady state. They actually usually have quite a bit more hemoglobin than they would normally, but it's just, there's half of it's bad, not half, but a fair amount's bad. So the result is this slight blue color that is striking, but also harmless. And these people didn't need much extra medical attention at all. Many of them lived well into their 80s and 90s. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So back to Cowain, who had read about the cure for this condition called methylene blue from an article that described methemoglobinemia and the science needed to identify the genes and proteins involved, that studied a similarly isolated population of Inuit people in Alaska who had the same problem. So the science had just now caught up to the point that they could identify, proteins and genes and so on and figure out what this actually was.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. And methylene blue is a salt used in chemistry that activates an alternate pathway to fix the methemoglobin, and it can be relatively safely injected overall. Does work very quickly, and Cowain was able to temporarily turn the blue fugates and the blue Combses and the blue Richies pink until it wore off. Unfortunately, it does have some side effects. It's safe overall if anyone ever needs it, but the blue color doesn't seem to make any of them sick. So they had, a couple days or of being pink, and then they went back again. He did turn it in pill form too, and they could take that like daily, but I don't know if it really caught on that much.
I don't think I've ever prescribed it.
But you've used it, right?
I've used it once. I've used it once for methemoglobinemia, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
But this was not a genetic cause. This was somebody who had it induced by a medication they were given for a hospital procedure, and they had, unbeknown to them, another underlying genetic condition that made them susceptible to it. And so they were given this medication, and they walked right out of a emergency medicine textbook right into our ER. And it was pretty easy. The diagnosis was pretty easy at that point, and I got to order methylene blue, and it was everything I hoped it would be. And
that's kind of cool. Did they turn pink right away?
I wandered off and had to do other stuff, and they kind of slowly
got bored. It's like a perfect, wonderful case, and that's such an emergency medicine answer. You're like, oh yeah, I kind of got bored of it. Like it lasted longer than 15 seconds. I was like, I
Have
think I got to
you
go do
ever-
something else.
You ever injected a knee with it?
Mm-hmm.
No, we were using saline by the
Okay.
time I was learning that.
Yeah, old school would be methylene blue in the knee.
Yeah, it's a tiny bit caustic, right? Isn't that why they stopped it? I'm not sure, but I did that once. And it was, I mean, you could definitely see when it came out the other side. So you can use it as a marker.
So basically an injury near the knee, and you're not sure if the injury hurt the knee joint. So then you take the methylene blue and you inject it into the knee joint and see if it spills out the wound, essentially.
Yep. And it showed up on the other side of it. So it shows up in the wound. You're like, oh, that's a problem.
Somebody's
And-
going to the OR.
Yep. And as you mentioned, the other big cause of this is certainly certain toxins and such can cause this problem. And it's a bigger problem then because your body hasn't adjusted. So it's like you suddenly just lose a bunch of functional hemoglobin. So
these guys who are genetically predisposed, they've had it all their life. Their body accumulates or acclimates to it. And they can be cyanotic and blue and technically a little bit lower on oxygen. It doesn't harm them. But for you or me, we're not used to this, and suddenly we lose a bunch of our oxygen capacity to suddenly chocolate blood. It's a problem.
yeah, exactly. Yep, they definitely they adjusted. It also seems like there are some other sort of darker sides to this whole saga and sort of a reason why the families were so ostracized. It does sound like
Man, it always ends up in dark places.
well, yeah, that's
Medical
just,
history
you're gonna
is-
ruin everything.
Ugh.
But this wasn't necessarily the doctor's fault this time. So it sounds like these folks suffered just a lot of prejudice because they were what's called, non-white. So they, there were reports of them suffering from a fair amount of discrimination and racism.
I don't know that it was because they were non-white. It was because they were blue.
Well, okay, fine.
Yeah,
okay.
it wasn't.
Oh yeah, okay.
They're blue. This is weird. It's unusual. Are they aliens?
Yeah, no,
It's
I
the
mean,
1960s, but then you think, yeah, this is just kind of
well, all the way
a
back to the
different time.
1820s. But I wouldn't say if you took the period of the 1820s to the 1960s in the rural South that you would,
Well,
tolerance would come to mind.
Known
I
as a
mean,
very progressive
yeah.
time.
yeah.
And I was hoping it was maybe not as big a deal, but there is a whole book called The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek, which is an interesting read for those who like historical fiction that uses the region and the family as a backdrop. And I found a comment, actually a family member wrote in and wrote a review that sort of first person validated some of this suffering. Of course, it's the internet, so you never know, but it read as real, and there were times when it was very uncomfortable. There were also stories of the last fugate, as it were, being teased by medical students because the baby would turn blue when he cried. So they'd stand and make the baby cry to see him change color. I suppose that's not too terrible, but it just kind of didn't make me feel great. And the reason he would change back and forth is because he had sort of a weaker expression of the gene as it started to eventually go away. Another boy who had the disorder was teased at school because when he got mad, he would turn blue. So just a little bit of stress or tension or change in the blood flow would, which I could totally see school children doing. That kind of tracks.
But hopefully, once that kid got older, learn to harness that as like a faked superpower.
Pretty cool.
I mean, I feel like it could be applied for something.
Yeah, wrestling. That guy, if he had gotten jacked and gotten a lot of skills, imagine if he could turn blue when he was angry.
The
That'd
blue
be
brawler.
Yeah, he could have
That is not a bad gimmick.
that'd be right. The whole arena would be they'd go nuts, don't you think? Like the guy starts turning blue, he gets all angry.
Dapsone until I become blue, and then I can be a wrestler.
One of the bluest of the blue fugates, according to relatives, named Luna Fugate, which is a little bit on the nose, calling a blue girl a moon name, but whatever.
I mean, the parents named her that, so
Yeah. He had a lifelong love called John Stacy, who built her a log cabin up in the woods. But even though everyone else remembers her as blue, he actually refused to agree when interviewed. It was sort of a blind spot for him. He couldn't bring himself to agree that she was blue. He'd just say, no, she wasn't. So,
Did he have blue peach color blindness?
now you're saying that. That's no, because he knew the rest of the family was blue. Just the woman he loved, he said, no, she wasn't blue. In my brief research, kind of hard to catalog exactly how difficult this was, but it highlights how we tend to treat those who are different in some way. It also highlights how we're able to live with all sorts of differences amongst those we count as our own family, our own circle. Because this family was happy. There were multiple generations, and they intermarried, and I think their life sounds quite rich in many, many ways. So that was kind of, I guess, hopeful.
very interesting.
So, and then, you'd think that's the end of the story. Madison Coyne III was just a curious hematologist, but I know this is a medical podcast, not a true crime podcast. But
I think I'm going to have to allow this now.
as I was looking at this, I ran into a whole other story, which is crazy. I mean, was he just a curious hematologist or was he a cold-blooded murderer? The question must be asked.
A blue-blooded murderer.
Yes, actually, yes, in all levels, right? So 1965, this Lexington, Kentucky, which you will remember is where he's from, a housewife named Mary Coyne, a socialite daughter of a horse auctioneer, was found dead in her home, married to one Madison Coyne III. And at first I was like, this can't be right.
Horse auctioneer?
Yeah, she was the socialite daughter of a horse auction. This was a position of privilege.
I guess you don't go to a horse store. Well, you gotta get a horse from somebody.
Yeah, the auctioneer, right? So this, and in Kentucky, this was probably a very powerful family. So Madison was a very busy guy after coming back from the war, having fallen in love with blood. His wife, Mary, may have started off as a happy wife when they married in 1949.
Blood is everything.
But there were stories of Madison having at least two affairs, one with another hematologist, totally a vampire couple, and one with one of his colleagues' wives that went on for years. So there was quite a bit of trouble in paradise. In June of 1965, Mary and Madison went drinking with their friends, the Struthers. So we're going to switch a little bit here. I'm going to outline this potential crime here. Witnesses later said they all had about 10 cocktails at the country club and then drove, back to the Struthers to keep drinking. And around 1 a.m., Mary said that she was ill and Sam Struther Jr. drove her home. I don't know why he drove her home instead of Madison. I'd still want it because they're all drunk at that point. I don't know. But anyway, so this Mary and Sam waited for the babysitter at the Coyne residence, both apparently in the bedroom because that was the only air-conditioned room, which is totally sus. And then Sam left to go drink more while Mary stayed at the house to be there for the sleeping children just in case they needed some help that a very intoxicated mother could provide. So by reports, Madison was too drunk to go home and then stayed the night at the Struther house. So that's what they said. The next morning, though, Betty Struther, who was the wife of Sam, went to check on Mary after she didn't answer her phone and found her dead in the bedroom, fully clothed, sitting up in a chair next to the bed with a partially empty bottle of booze there. She called her husband, who came over with Madison, and they promptly took the scotch that was sitting on the bedside table and a beer that was sitting on the bedside table and threw those out for some unknown reason, and then called some doctor friends to pronounce her dead instead of, I don't know, the police or the paramedics or the coroner or anyone else at all. They called their doctor friend.
This is why I turn off my phone at night, and when you guys call, I don't answer.
Max, hey, I need a solid.
I need so you got to come pronounce this lady dead.
Announce or pronouns?
Pronouns.
Because you could pronounce.
That doesn't even count as a pun.
And then announce. No, you can pronounce and then announce, but you can't announce first because
he pronounced. Like, he didn't announce it to anyone else. It was like a secret, and then eventually they got somebody. Now during that, when he pronounced her, he noticed that there were two little needle injection points in the legs. He noticed a little bit of blood on her night skirt, I guess, or whatever they wore in 1965. So we don't know what that was. Okay. So Madison, of course, insisted it was a suicide. And when the police came a bit later to the crime scene, they did an autopsy. They found a blood alcohol level of 0.4. And I love how all the blogs that talk about this true crime are like just under the lethal limit. I'm like, that's not even close. No, that's not even close.
Well, it all depends on how much you drink. If she's not habituated, 0.4 could potentially.
Yeah, you or I. But if you go to the country club and you drink 10 drinks and then drive home, I think you're probably at least a little habituated. But anyway,
basically what you're saying is that there's no universal lethal limit. It's just how much you have accustomed your biologic processes to alcohol. And there are some people that can do calculus at a 0.4 and other people who can't possibly be awake or conscious at a 0.4.
Yeah, it's amazing the conversations I've had where they seem totally lucid at that level. So, but the autopsy also found that she died of carbolic acid poisoning or phenol poisoning. And they said phenol gastritis is kind of what they said. I haven't seen the actual reports. It'd kind of be probably pretty fascinating to look at. So they concluded that she was poisoned or it was in her drink or something like that. So this phenol is a weak acid that none other than our own Dr. Joseph Lister, who we've talked about before, used as an early anesthetic until it was abandoned due to skin irritation. Topical anesthetic too. But remembering that Madison started his career in World War II, phenol is also a poison that was used specifically by injection by the Nazis for executions. It causes rapid paralysis of the central nervous system. So I'm very suspicious about these little injection sites on both sides of her thigh. And there was one, I couldn't double source this because, well, also I'm not a journalist and this isn't a news podcast, but somebody mentioned that there was a syringe in the bedside drawer as well with Madison's fingerprints on it. Now he has an alibi. Madison has an alibi because he was apparently too drunk to leave his friends' houses, but he has a motive. And I think he either was habituated, so he left during the time he said he was sleeping, or that he got his friend Sam to inject Mary before he left. But that
what
one,
if it
I
was
don't know.
Sam? What if it was Sam? They're both in the
Definitely
bedroom
could be.
together.
Nobody talks about Sam. All these people talk about all these other, like the other hematologist, or they talk about the husband of the other affair he's had, which is actually a patient of his. Like every little layer of this onion just is more and more rotten. And of course, it's unsolved because nobody. This is a rich white guy in 1960s Kentucky. They never filed any charges at all for anyone for this crime. There was no trial. There was nothing at all. So, but everyone has concerns about Madison. So,
It was Sam. Case closed. Find him.
yeah, I mean the other hematologist, she also would have had the knowledge. They're all dead now anyway.
So Sam and Mary are having a thing. They're in the bedroom together, and she's about to tell her husband, and Sam's like, "No, you can't because I've got a happy marriage. I can't do this." He's like, "I know how to keep you quiet," and he has a pocket full of phenol syringes just in case.
But Sam's not okay. So the only hole in that one is Sam wasn't a doctor. Sam was just one of their friends.
But what did he do for a living? Pharmaceutical rep?
No. It was something else. It was like sales or something like that. But he had his friend Madison. So I think somehow they worked together. That's too big a coincidence. Your wife dies by an injection that you would have no.
But again, her blood alcohol is 0.4. I mean, that's like,
yeah, she definitely could have just died from that. It's definitely true.
She'd been drunk. You reach in the bedside table. There's a bunch of phenol syringes.
Maybe.
You don't know what to do.
Maybe,
stab yourself in the thighs.
Maybe they're like, "Oh, that's Zofran. You feel like you're gonna barf? Here, just take a shot of this."
I don't think they developed it back then.
Oh, they had it.
That's a whole.
They
in your
just didn't
theory,
tell
Mike.
anybody.
Anyway,
Thalidomide.
So for our true crime listeners, this is an interesting case, but sadly, it is unsolved.
Yeah, I don't think we're very good at true crime presentation. I mean, the presentation was great. I had our time.
You're just saying that Aaron isn't good at it.
No, he did a great job.
No,
what I'm saying is that
that's okay.
No, I love it. I'm not
offended at all.
But what I'm saying is like, we could figure out the medical stuff a lot easier because clearly I've already figured out this murder mystery.
Yeah,
it's not that big of a deal.
You nailed it. Yeah, totally.
We need to exhume Sam's body, and then.
I mean, that is totally sus. Here, I'll drive your wife home, and then we're going to hang out in the bedroom.
Maybe that's just the way that things happened back in the day. Yeah,
it could be. I mean, they said they left their door open.
Would you mind doing a hit on my wife, mate? No problem, mate.
Like that can't be accurate. It's using an Australian accent, not a Southern accent. Well, it's not true to the story.
Oh, yes. I was just wondering if you could take care of a little problem for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I do declare. I've got a rogue wife.
Things would be much easier if I just had you take care of a little problem.
She shared her bed. She shared her bed with my friend Sam.
Well, now that we've speculated well outside of our scope and offended the entire American South, that being said, I think that's probably where we should leave it for today. We appreciate everyone listening. If you'd like to send us a message or provide feedback, we can be reached through our website, www.poorhistorianspod.com. There you shall find links to our social media sites. We take emails as well at poorhistorianspod@gmail.com. And if you're old-fashioned, send us a message in a bottle, throw it in the Great Lakes, and it'll probably arrive here someday. And with that, that's all for today. Sam didn't do it.
Freezing. Now listen here.
May I help
We
you?
just need to imagine that we're sitting on a nice wraparound porch, and the crickets are going in the background. We got a nice ice cold glass of a mint julep.
Oh
with
yeah,
the
I had a julep last weekend.
condensation on the
motherfucker.
back, right?
It's,
That their language is not called for. There's no need.
Oh, I lost it because all I can hear us. in
I'm
Australia.
aware. I'm trying to get you back
I
on
was gonna
track
say
here,
Mike's
boy.
gonna
I'm
go
trying.
into
I'm
an
trying,
Australian
man.
accent
I'm
at some
trying.
point.
Oh, there.
Well,
Hello.
Aaron is dialed in.
May I help you?
Mike, find
All
out.
right.
just trying to
Hello there.
reel you back
Hey,
in.
all
yeah.
right. May I help you? Okay. Yeah, I
All
can
right,
help you.
okay,
Can you
yeah,
help me?
yeah, okay.
Thank you for helping me.
All right. I think we're pretty good here.
Yeah.
All right.
We're back. We're
Well,
back.
I already started the recording, so I think that'll go
Let's
towards
go.
it.
Well, there's an
So
outtake,
let's-
old boy. That's an outtake. You might. I don't know. You might want to edit out some of that last one. I don't know how far it went off the rails, but I had to.
I'll
I
listen
love
to
it.
it and
Yeah, I
decide.
liked it a lot. The dark
You would.
twist.
Yeah, I was, at first I was reading it going, I don't know, this is way outside. And I was like, no, this is actually pretty
Part of the
crazy.
story. Yeah, it's
I
part
like
of
the
story.
tangent. I like
Mhm.
the tangent. Yeah, you know what?
It's like,
probably
oh,
gonna leave it.
Phineas Gage, his story. Like, okay, so he got a rod through his head, and then he was different. Like, there was more to the story that wasn't medical, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it was the actual guy. So, and it wasn't interesting to look into the keys of Kentucky. There was just a lot of old 18th century poetry.
How many poems can you write about the fucking Ozarks?
But they weren't writing it about
Hard to rhyme too.
their blueness.
No. Well, he wasn't blue. That was
Is
Coane.
that Smoky Mountains?
Oh, that's right.
The Smokies are down there. Yeah.
I mean, are the Smokies the Ozarks, or the Ozarks
That
a
is a
certain
darn
chunk
good
of
question.
the Smokies?
I don't know. We could Google it right now.
I don't really want to know the answer
A
though.
lot of people are they listen to the Vegetable Wars we had a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, no, it's in fact, I should have pointed out that in the beginning that we should have had a shout out that listeners have overwhelmingly weighed in. 2 of them saying that peas are amazing, and that Mike is wrong.
How many people was it? It probably was just 2 people.
I mean, those are the 2 that I recall. I know there was many others.
Yeah. I think I took a really hard stance. Like, I probably shouldn't have said I would take a shit on the peas and throw them in the garbage. That was a
I
little.
don't think it made it into the episode. No, it did actually.
It did. Yeah, I remember listening to it.
That's right.
I think it's
My
fine.
mother was horrified.
It's fine.